All right, Matthew chapter 5. Let's go ahead and read the scripture first. I'll start reading in verse 1. Remember, we're doing the Sermon on the Mount, and it's going to be a long study because the Sermon on the Mount is quite long. It's chapters 5, 6, and 7. So we're taking portions of that, and we're just going to work our way through it and see what Jesus has to teach us and tell us. Tonight, let me start reading in chapter 5, verse 1. And seeing the multitudes, he went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, and let's jump on down to verse 11. We have gone through the Beatitudes, and we'll finish with those right here. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And tonight we're in verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Remember in verse 1, Jesus took his disciples on top of a mountain to teach them. And when he got them there, a multitude showed up to hear. A whole group of people showed up. Now, in the book of Luke, it said it was on a plain, and some folks had said, well, that doesn't go together. How can he be on a mountain and on a plain? Well, he was on top of a mountain where it's a plain. It's a flat place on top of the mountain. I don't know for sure, but I looked up and I found the plain of Gennesaret. And that's a plain that sits up high on a mountain right near Galilee. And that's where he had been, in Galilee. That's where he'd been traveling through. And this is right at the edge of the Sea of Galilee. And from this vantage point, from right there overlooking the Sea of Galilee, he and the disciples have a great view of what's going on below. You can look, I looked at the pictures, and from that plain, from that flat area, you can look down on the Sea of Galilee. And it may be that the fishermen had spent the night fishing, and here came Jesus and the disciples and that group of people, and they were there, and they could look down and see the fishermen coming into shore. And as they saw those fishermen come in, since there was no refrigeration, they had to do something with their fish. What they did was they had crates, and they would take salt, and they'd salt down that crate. They'd put a layer of fish in it, and they'd salt down that layer of fish, and they'd put another layer on until the crate was full. They'd just put layer of salt and fish. And it could be that Jesus looked down, and as he looked down and observed that, and many people turned around and saw that going on at the seaside, that was when Jesus said, you're the salt of the earth. It could be. Now, I'm just using my sanctified imagination, but that's very possible that happened. Now, as I was looking at this, and you know, I just like to have fun. I remembered someone preaching this message years ago, and as they talked about the multitude of people, I'm getting away from there because of what I'm going to say. As they talked about the multitude of people, they said every time Jesus spoke, there were just hordes of people. And this particular preacher was an older preacher, and he meant to say that there were people coming in throngs from everywhere. And he said people came in thongs from everywhere. And I had all of my youth sitting on the front row, and the music pastor was right over here, and when he said people came in thongs from everywhere, I looked down. Linda was punching me. The music director was going, Bruce, did you hear what he said? And I'm trying to move along, and I've never forgot that, the people coming in thongs. But it can be a slip of the tongue. I know I get preaching sometimes, and a word will come out, and it's really not the word I mean to come out. It's just your mouth starts moving so fast. But there was a large group of people, a throng of people that were on this shore and on this plain, and Jesus was teaching them. I'm going to share with you over the few minutes tonight. I'm not going to go long, but I just want to share with you some uses of salt. Some uses of salt. Did you know that salt preserves? I'm sure you know that. Salt preserves just like it did with those fish we were talking about. What it does is when you put salt on a meat or on something to preserve it, it dries out that food. And it's a preservative. It makes it last. Salt purifies. Did you know that? Salt purifies. By removing the water, the liquid, it dries out that item. And by doing that, it makes it too dry to create bacteria. It makes it too dry for mold to build up. So it purifies, but it also flavors. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? That's what we use salt for today, to flavor. I've watched many a person that I'll sit down to eat with, and before they even lift their fork, lift their spoon, they're lifting a salt shaker and shaking it across the food. It flavors. But some observations about salt tonight. Some uses, now some observation. Salt is useless unless it's scattered. Salt is useless unless it's scattered. And by that I mean, if the salt stays in the salt shaker, it doesn't do any good. What happens to salt when it's in a salt shaker and a little bit of moisture hits it? It gets hard as a rock, doesn't it? It's completely useless. The other day I went in the kitchen and I'm trying to remember what I wanted to get. I wanted to get garlic powder. Thank you, Linda. I wanted to get garlic powder, and I looked in there, and I said, oh, good, we've got some. I was doing the meat for the Brotherhood, and I said, oh, good, we've got some. And I picked up a full bottle of garlic powder, and it was hard as a rock. I said, well, that's okay, there's another one. There was another one just as hard as a rock. And if it stays in the shaker, if salt stays in the shaker, it just draws moisture and hardens. It's best when it's spread out. Some people here, and I don't know what's wrong with you, but some of y'all like to shake salt out on a watermelon, don't you? How many like to do that here? Well, I guess I'm in the minority, aren't I? Or a tomato. What'd you say? I'm preaching now, huh? I thought you said you're preaching now. But I've seen people with different fruits. I've seen somebody with a peach sprinkle some. Doris. Cantaloupe, apples. But you sprinkle it. Now, I like a little bit on my steak. I like a little bit on my corn on the cob. But listen to what a preacher said one time. Henry Ward Beecher said, if you want your neighbor to see what the Christ spirit or Christian spirit will do in you, let him see what it's done in you. If your neighbor wants to know what it'll do for him, let him see what it'll do for you. That's shared Christianity. That's living it out. That's getting it out of the salt shaker. We shouldn't just be Christians here. It's funny how much we'll hug each other in here, but you all see me on the street and you don't hug me. What's the matter with y'all? Junior, why won't you hug me when you see me at the bank? But we need to get our Christianity outside the salt shaker, out of the church. Not just here. I mean, I want you to exercise it here. I want you to love one another. I want you to act like Christ. But let's get it out of the salt shaker and get it out of the church. Another thing, a little salt goes a long way. A little salt goes a long way. It doesn't take a lot of salt to season something, does it? A pinch will do it. There was a preacher, again, that same preacher that I'll call him thong preacher. That thong preacher, he would make a pot of coffee and he'd put a pinch of salt in it to take the bitter out. And I'd taste his coffee and I'd say, man, that's good coffee. So I tried it at home. Linda and I both spewed that coffee out of our mouth before I put too much in. Do you know salty coffee is not good? A little bit will go a long way. Have you ever gone somewhere and the person that ate in a restaurant before you loosened the salt shaker top? And you go to shake it out and you're laughing like you did it, Perry. He's shaking his head, And you go to shake a little salt out and it just pours out. It is hard to get that salt off from your food, isn't it? I mean, if you've got a pork chop sitting there, here I'm talking about food tonight, a pork chop sitting there, a steak sitting there, and you go to shake a little on there and it just pours out, it's hard to scrape that salt off, isn't it? It's hard to get it off there. A little salt goes a long way. I remember in high school going into McDonald's or somewhere, and somebody got up to go use the bathroom or talk to somebody, and another person at the table pulled the lid off the bun off from their hamburger, and they poured salt on there and put it back on. It was almost unedible. Jeff probably does that to you, doesn't he? You got that look on your face. He would. Look, Charles is coming up to confess right now. But a little salt goes a long way. It doesn't take much. And listen, if you want to be a witness to somebody, we don't have to, for use of a better phrase, we don't have to cram our Christianity down their throat. If we'll live it out, now I'm not saying just live it out. The Bible tells us to preach the word. It tells us to say something. I mean, somebody might just think you're a nice person if you do good things. But if you do good things and you tell them the reason that you do those things, then our good works will speak loudly. But all it takes sometimes to have an impact on people is just a few words. All it takes to have an impact on people is just to go out of your way to touch their life. You know, a kind word sometimes goes a long ways. Have you ever gone into, I'll just use Walmart because that's where I do all my high-class shopping. But have you ever gone into Walmart and you see a long line and you look at that poor cashier at the register and they look like they've been beat? I mean, they're having a tough time. Sometimes instead of saying, my goodness, you need more cashiers in here. That took me 30 minutes to get through your line. Tell them, you are doing a great job. Man, I appreciate you, or just talk to them. Linda says I talk to everybody because I'll look at their name tag and I'll call them by name. And there's something about being called by name when you're over there and there's all these nameless people going through grumbling and they're giving you their money, that when you call them by name and tell them they're doing a good job or tell them something nice, it just goes a long way. And we need to use that. A little salt goes a long way. Salt never draws attention to itself except when it's in the wrong place. Salt never draws attention to itself except when it's in the wrong place. When sprinkled on food, it brings out a natural flavor. I mean, when you put it on your watermelon, when you put it on your tomatoes, your apples or whatever, or for me, my steak or my corn on the cob, it's right there. But have you ever had homemade ice cream and some of that rock salt gets into the ice cream? It's out of place, isn't it? It's not good. I mean, it's not good. Well, that's what it's like when a Christian compromises and we're in the wrong place. Well, we can learn a lot from salt. We need to be the places we're supposed to be. We need to be the places we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, not doing things that we shouldn't. We know. I used to tell teenagers, it's not that you don't know what to do, it's that you don't want to do what you know to do. And it's not just teenagers, it's all of us. It's not that we don't know what to do, it's that we don't want to do what we know to do. You know that salt is made up of different sized grains. I mean, we just see salt and we think it all looks the same. But if you put that under a microscope, the salt is all different sizes, all different shapes. And when I think about that, I think about Christians. Now, we're all different sizes. We're all different shapes, aren't we? But we also have all different talents. I've talked to Christians before that they feel like they're a second-class citizen if they can't sing in the choir, Leon. Or they feel like they're a second-class citizen if they can't teach Sunday school. You know, those high-priority positions in the church. If they can't run the sound, they feel like well, maybe you're not out front. But there's folks that feel like I don't have a place in the church because I don't have a talent. Everyone here is needed. Listen to 1 Corinthians in chapter 12. For in fact, the body is not one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I'm not of the body, is therefore not of the body? If the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body was an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set members, each one of them in the body, just as He pleased. He gave us just the talents He wanted us to have. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now indeed there are many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. Those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor. And our unpresentable parts have great modesty, but our presentable parts have no need. But God composed the body, having given greater honor to the part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. Listen to verse 26. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. You know, everybody in the church body is needed. And everybody in the church body has gifts and abilities. I knew one lady way back in Claxton when I surrendered to the ministry. I still remember to this day. She was a large lady. She was one of the sweetest ladies I ever met. Couldn't sing a lick. I mean, I guess I get that from Mayberry and Barney. Just couldn't sing a lick. She couldn't sing a lick. She wasn't a Sunday school teacher. And we were talking, and she said, Bruce, I know where my giftedness lies. I said, where is it? She said, I just got to tell you, I'm one prayer warrior. And she was. I mean, she was a lady that even when I moved to Tennessee, I would call back there and talk to her and give her my prayer requests because I knew that lady would pray. Listen, salt's made up of different grains, and just like Christians, we're all different, but we all have talents, and we all need one another. I miss you when you're not here. I miss that pack of Arflins this morning when they weren't here, but I miss you. Number 3, and we're rolling down the list pretty quick. Learn from the salt. The Christian's place of influence. Salt is salt because it's different. Salt is salt because it's different. Let me ask you a question. Who do I never ask a question? Hubert, what does salt taste like? You know, I can't think of another answer. If I ask you, what does salt taste like? Salt. Lewis had a different answer. I saw him move his mouth. Doesn't taste like pepper. Your only answer, it tastes like salt. It's unique. And the influence of a Christian should be unique. We should make a difference in the world around us. We're different. We shouldn't be worldly. The Scripture talks about it. We shouldn't be worldly Christians. We shouldn't be carnal Christians. We should be unique in the workplace, unique in the places that where we're around a lot of people. We should stand out as unique. Salt also is pure. One of the purest elements known to mankind is salt. You can dig salt straight out of a salt pit, and it's pure. We can learn from that. As Christians, we should be pure. Like salt, we should be pure. We should walk a life that is a pure life. Purity, choosing the ways that Christ chooses for us. We shouldn't be somewhere else. We shouldn't be doing something else. We should be pure. There's no substitute for salt. Now, some of you would say that's not true, and I'm supposed to eat less sodium now. My doctor says low sodium. So I have a salt substitute. But I've got to tell you, it isn't salt. It doesn't taste the same. I use it, makes me feel better, but there's no substitute for salt. Once it loses the ability of salt, nothing can take its place. Nobody can take the place of a witnessing Christian. Nobody can take the place of a Christian whose life does what his lips say. You know, it's easy to talk a good game, isn't it? I think about the Super Bowl's coming up next week. And I think about those armchair quarterbacks that on Monday morning they'll say, they should have done this. Or they'll sit on that couch and they'll point, oh, they need to do this. Listen, when you can really get in the game, and I'm talking about when we can do what we say, not just talking a good game, not just talking about how we'll reach people, not just talking about how we'll live a good life for the Lord, not just talking about all those things, but actually doing it, there's no substitute for Christianity. One more thing. Salt can be useless. Salt can be useless, and that's what it said in the Scripture. It said, if salt loses its flavor, how can it be seasoned? It is good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. When salt got dirt mixed in with it back in that day, They didn't try to get the dirt out. They didn't try to clean it up. They ended up throwing it on the ground. They spread it around those old slippery roads around Jerusalem. And here, I think one of the saddest things is when a Christian loses his influence. When a Christian loses his testimony. And I've seen it. You've seen it. Somebody that maybe we've seen it in preachers. That preacher made an impact on the world and made an impact on a lot of people, and then he fell. Lost his purity. Lost his testimony. And he couldn't speak to the world anymore. When he spoke, people would say, can't trust him because he's a hypocrite. Let me ask you a question as we close tonight. Do people know you're a Christian? Do people know you're a Christian? Let me go a little bit further. Do they act differently when you're around than when they're in a group of lost people? Let me explain that maybe. Will they tell a dirty joke when you're there? Will they make crude remarks when you're there? Then the next thing, do you stay and listen and laugh along with the rest? Do people know you're a Christian? Do they seek you out when they have a problem? They seek you out because it's obvious that you care and that you'll pray for them? Do people know you're a Christian? Is it obvious that you have high standards in your life? Do you live in such a way? Not that you're above everybody, but you live in such a way that they can tell a difference in your life. Here's the scripture we read again tonight. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. I usually don't read this other version, but I looked at the contemporary English version of the Bible, and listen to what it says. You are like salt for everyone on earth. But if salt no longer tastes like salt, how can it make food salty? All it's good for is to be thrown out and walked on. How's your life? How's your Christianity? Are you a salty Christian? Are you making a difference? You know, that's why he left us here. He saved us to make a difference. Otherwise, he could just save us and beam us on up to heaven. But we have plans, and he wants to do something with us. Stand with me as we close tonight. I want to challenge us tonight as we think about the Sermon on the Mount, as we think about the teachings of Christ, and as he was talking to his disciples that day and asking them these same questions and presenting to them, they understood all about salt. And I think we do too. But what he's challenging us to do is to live a life that's radical from the normal. To live a life that's different, that stands out so that we might reach a world around us, so we'd have a testimony for him. We're not asked to die for him. We're just asked to live for him.